I've got this recipe posted on my website, or it will post after this call. And this is kind of just an idea, really, more than a recipe. And now I've opened 2 cans. This is awesome. So this stuff is called El Pato. I like to call this recipe El Pato to the rescue because it's so simple. This is a can of, it's called jalapeno salsa. Oh, can I see this? Yeah? Okay. So you can find this kind of in the Mexican section of your grocery store. It's it comes on, they've got a red can as well, which I also like for a little difference. The ingredients on this I love because it's tomato, water, chilies, onion, garlic, salt, and spices. So really nice, right? No sugar, no weird stuff, no preservatives. It's just really simple, and it's going to give a great Mexican flavor. That's it. Like, that's seriously done. I just put it on high. It's going to cook for 4 hours, or I can do it on low for about 6. And then when it comes out, I'm going to shred it up and throw it back in the sauce and let it cool off. And that's a great shredded Mexican chicken, right? You can throw it onto a taco salad, throw it into tortillas for tacos. I love it on its own, just with some roasted vegetables or any other kind of veggie side. And it also freezes, so just having that cooked Mexican chicken is going to be great for me this week. And I do it all sorts of different ways. You can use canned salsa or barbecue sauce or Frank's Red Hot Buffalo sauce, whatever you like. I just like to throw chicken breasts in a crock pot with something on top of them, and then it's just something to have all week. So these veggies are, I'm going to call them done, because they are pretty well sauteed. And now I want to cool these down, so I'm going to put them back in this bowl that just came out of, after I find my of glove. If you're accident prone in the kitchen, this is a great thing to have. So next I'm going to do some roasted vegetables. This is a great thing to have on hand. I spread these out a little bit so they can cool out really quickly. So I've already cut these up. It's one thing I had a chance to do ahead of time. And so I've got this baking tray. And on it I have some asparagus that I cut up. Take this of glove off. I've got carrots. I'm trying to show you guys the pieces here. I've got some golden beets. I love beets. These are golden because the red beets were probably this big at the grocery store, and I thought, oh my god, I think those have been in the ground for 2 years, and they would be woody and gross, and I really like beets. And these are parsnips. If you've never had a parsnip, they look kind of like a big white carrot, and they're kind of sweet like a carrot, but they've got kind of this little spicy, nutty note, and they're really delicious roasted. Sometimes I do them on their own, and I pretend they're French fries. What else do I have in here? Carrots, asparagus, parsnips, and beets. That's it. So this you can do with anything. I had some cauliflower I was going to throw in here, but this is kind of enough veggies for me for today. And I'm just going to roast these off. So I've got some olive oil. This is a rare occasion I'm using olive oil in a heat thing. But my microwave is blocked right now by a bunch of junk, so I can't get in it to melt coconut oil. So there you go. And I'm going to salt these pretty well. And then I'm going to throw on a little bit of ground turmeric. So this is the yellow stuff that makes curry powder yellow, and mustard as well. It has a pretty mild flavor, but I like it. And then there is some kind of health benefit to this. I think it's called curcumin or something. This element that's in turmeric is good for you. So you can search that on the internet later. I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist. So that's it. I'm going to kind of just wiggle these around. Here's a tip that I learned not long ago. Do not mix turmeric on your vegetables by hand. I did that last week, and I went to yoga, and I looked down at my fingers, and my fingernails were stained yellow, and not in a good way. So that's a free tip, by the way. No charge for that. So I'm going to use a wooden spoon here to poke these a little bit so they attempt to get covered with oil. And the only trick here is a single layer and 400-degree oven. And I'm going to watch them and stir them around maybe once or twice if I think of it, and see what turns out. So this just goes right in the oven. Alright, so what do I do with a big plate of roasted vegetables? Anything. I'll eat them for dinner as a veggie side with a protein. I like to maybe hit them with a little bit of balsamic vinegar. I won't be doing that this week. Maybe some lemon juice, a little bit of acid on them. They're great the next day cold, just dressed with a little bit of more oil and vinegar as a salad. They're great on top of a salad. They're great in omelets, on top of eggs. Or you can make them into soup. Either just throw them in a pan with some chicken stock, run an immersion blender through it, or do it in your Vitamix. It's also a good tip if you overcook your vegetables on accident, to blend them up and pretend like that was your choice all along. Cutting them up, you want to make sure they're in, I like to say, pieces that will cook at the same rate. So veggies cook different times, so your harder vegetables should be cut smaller than your softer vegetables. If you've got something like zucchini in with that, you want to make sure those are pretty big. But it's not it's not so much science. I just sort of wing it. And if you get a little al dente piece, then we call it textural contrast, and we act like it was our plan. So that's let's see. We've got roasted veg going. We've got our chicken in a crock pot. I've talked to you about that, and I'm going to mix up my meatballs and get those ready to go. So meatballs are another thing I love to have around because they reheat and freeze really well. I have a pound of ground meat. I have half pork and half beef. You can do anything you like, including ground turkey or whatever. I bought 1 pound packages of pork and beef from the butcher because it just seemed easier that way. And then I put the other 2 halves into the Ziploc bag. And then I smushed them in so they were flat. And so this will fit into my freezer better. And also it'll defrost really fast. So if you're like me, man, I come home and I've got frozen meat that I'm trying to cook with. Irritated takeout city, right? So I'm going to throw this in the freezer before I forget. Okay, so I've got my meat. I'm going to put an egg in that. These are going to be gluten and dairy free, and they're going to be kind of Italian style meatballs. I would love to put some Parmesan cheese in these because that's how I used to make Italian meatballs before I started cutting out dairy. This is my ode to cooking shows. I've already portioned this out. This is a little bit of almond flour, some dried basil and oregano, some salt, and a little bit of cayenne pepper. And I'm just going to throw that in there. I'll post the recipe online so you guys can see that. And then I'm going to throw in my somewhat cooled veg. I would let this cool a little bit more if you weren't watching me, but it's going to be just fine. I'm going to put it in the bowl, not on top of that egg, just so it doesn't cook the egg. This is cool to throw these vegetables in it because now I'm sort of sneaking vegetables in. If you are a mom, I hear that that's a really good way to get kids to eat vegetables. I'm not a mother, so I can't pretend to know what that's like. But I also like to sneak vegetables into my own diet sometimes, so that I get enough vegetables. So we've also used up some leftover veg and supplemented our diet with veg. Okay, and I've got this, this is the broiler 2-part deal that comes, it lives in the bottom drawer of your oven everywhere in America that I've ever been. This came with it. If you don't have something like this, that's okay, just a regular cookie sheet will do, or a cookie sheet with a rack on it. And I'm going to take off my wedding ring and just mix this up. So I used almond flour. Of course my headset's falling out because I just sunk my hands into ground meat. Can you guys still hear me? Nod your head. Okay, cool. Sorry, I can see a few of you on video. What was it? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Yes, I like to... That's a whole different... I do. So, my history with food... Let me get my headset fixed. I feel like I'm looking all crazy and poor posture here. Okay. So, my history with food started early on when my mom was a chef, and my brother is a chef as well. But when we grew up, we had a very large kitchen in our house. And the 4 of us, my mom and my dad and my brother and I, always cooked dinner together every night and sat down and ate together. And it was a really formative experience, not only the family time, but also just learning about food and learning to love food. And then since my family, a lot of them were in the food business, I did that as well. I worked in restaurants for a long time. I had a bit of a catering company for a while, and have just spent a lot of time around the restaurant industry and around food. I naturally enjoy cooking, so that's just a little bit about my love of food. But it does make things a little bit easier when you're especially in catering or event function. I worked at a golf course, country club, so we're doing weddings and golf tournaments and stuff. You learn a lot about prepping food and chopping vegetables really quickly. So it's probably giving me a little bit of a leg up. Okay, so now I've got this meatballs mixed up. Again, I used almond flour here in the place of breadcrumbs. That's your choice. I've got here a little disher, ice cream scoop jobby, right? These are actually not good for ice cream, but they're really good for stuff like this. And I use this because it's very easy for me to pump out meatballs very quickly. And I'm just going to kind of lightly form them into balls. This is pretty wet because of all the vegetables, but I like that because sometimes, if you've ever had a gluten-free meatball, sometimes they're either super dry because they've used a ton of almond or coconut flour, or they just taste like little round hamburgers because that's just what they are.